Right now, we have quite a treat. He is a member of the Basketball Hall of Fame, coached in the ABA, the NBA, and the college ranks. He led Kansas to an NCAA title in 1988 and led the Detroit Pistons to an NBA title in 2004. And now he's the new head basketball coach at SMU. Larry Brown with us in studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in here.
Got me up early.
We don't normally have Hall of Famers in our studio, so we're thrilled that you're here this morning. I know a lot of SMU people are thrilled that now that you're their basketball coach. It's been reported that you turned down a couple of college jobs here in the last decade or so. So why SMU?
Well, I just think the time was right. You know, I have a young family, and it was kind of hard to move them. And, you know, since I've been out of work for a few years, a lot of people that have coached with me and helped me along my way allowed me to come to their practices. I've been at Kansas and Kentucky and Maryland, Villanova. I live in Villanova. I drive Jay Wright crazy. So watching those guys coach and interact with the kids and being involved in the college atmosphere and having the chance to teach, I think SMU affords me all that. And, you know, I was just excited about it. June Jones is the one that kind of pushed me and kept me involved, and I'm really thankful that he did it because it's a great school and a great opportunity going in the Big East.
Of course, one of the biggest things in college athletics is being able to recruit, and that's the one question I think a lot of people have about Larry Brown since you've been out of the college game for so long. You've coached in the pros since '88. Will you still be able to get out there and recruit?
You mean because I'm too old?
No, I'm not just saying that.
I think that's what he was saying, Coach.
Yeah, I think that's what he's saying, too.
No, I think it's just the opposite, to be honest with you. Everywhere I go to visit college kids, and I've had the opportunity to go everywhere and watch practice, which is a blessing for me because I learn so much. Kids are so interested in me because I've had an NBA background. They all want to go to the NBA. You could go to Harvard, and every kid in that program wants to be a one and done. So that in itself is a huge advantage. You know, the fact that I've coached a lot of great players, they're all interested in that, want to hear all about it. So you get instant credibility right away. And I think the contacts I've made as a pro coach and the kids that have coached with me that are now working on every level, they're all going to help. I even got a call from Donnie Nelson the beginning of the week with some kids from about Lithuanian athletes, and, you know, they have a tremendous pipeline there. So this is happening. I think it'll be a tremendous advantage, and we got a great school. That's the best thing. You know, SMU is a tremendous school academically. It's beautiful. It's in a great location. We got the Mavericks here and the Spurs, the Rockets. That's always, you know, interesting for kids. And we're going in the Big East. So I think we're going to be relevant with a lot of kids, and I'm going to have a great staff. There's no doubt on my mind the people that we hire are going to be able to do a great job in giving us an opportunity to recruit high-type kids.
This SMU basketball coach Larry Brown with us here on the Dunham & Miller Show. Announced yesterday on the Hilltop that he'll be the new coach at SMU. And for the last week when we've been hearing your name with this job, we've heard about the coach in waiting, that your top assistant will not only be the associate head coach, but he's going to be the coach in waiting. Is that the plan, and could you explain that process and how that's going to work?
Well, I hope he waits a while. When I was interviewed, I think Steve Orsini wanted a head coach, a standing head coach, and that was a concern they had about me, you know, not being involved in college athletics since 1988. And then when we got involved more, he thought, wow, what if we could get a standing head coach who could work with me. So I put a list together of guys that, you know, a pretty successful head coach coaches that I have a relationship with, because you can't hire somebody unless you have a relationship, I don't think. You know, I can teach people all the basketball I've been taught, but I can't teach them to love me. So loyalty is a real key thing for me. So I made a list of guys that I thought, you know, possibly might be interested. I didn't want it to be a lateral move. I wanted to make sure financially, you know, they would be okay, and I wanted to make sure that they could take over when the time was right, because they were obviously going to have to give up a lot. And I had a lot of people that had interest, and I'm confident we're going to get somebody that's going to work with me, and when the time's right, be able to step right in and be the next head coach. But I don't want a guy to go out and recruit and people think I'm only going to be here a couple of days, you know, because I would imagine a lot of people might use that against you. I know
Sure.
living in Pennsylvania, they used to kill Coach Paterno's about that. And he lasted a pretty long time and did a wonderful job. So, you know, I'm hopeful that, you know, I'm in here for the long haul, and all my coaches that sit next to me have a chance to be a head coach someday, and hopefully one will take my place and be pretty successful doing it.
Larry Brown, of course, had the ultimate success at both the college and pro level. So what was more satisfying, winning the national championship with Kansas in '88 or the NBA title with Detroit in '04?
I'm not going to check that one. You know, winning championships are probably the goal of everybody, but probably the most satisfying thing for me is to see the guys that have helped me coach along the way that are doing, you know, an excellent job, and then the players that I have the good fortune of coaching, seeing them become successful. And I love to teach and coach. Every day I walk on the court it's a wonderful thing for me. Winning obviously is pretty special, but just being involved in this game on the levels I've been and having the opportunities I've had, and that's great, because I've never worked, and I know I got to be thankful for being involved with Frank McGuire and Dean Smith and Mr. Iba, people like that. I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for them. So that's the reward I've gotten.
So you had those years in the ABA. The paper this morning has a picture of you from your ABA days with some sweet checkered pants that you had going back then. And then our producer dug up a picture of you from the ABA days of you coaching in overalls. Now, what was that all about? Was that overall night, or what was going on there?
No, I was going to work.
In the 70s in the ABA, that was no big deal, right?
That was it. They didn't care how you acted, really. But I remember when I got my first coaching job, Al Bianchi was my coach when I played in the ABA, and I was going to coach the Carolina Cougars with Doug Moe, and Al said, boy, I can get you in a great clothing place in New York and get all the stuff you want at cost. And we got 86 games, we're going to have to dress appropriately. So Doug Moe and I went to New York, and they gave us a shopping cart, and we walked in this warehouse with racks and racks of sport coats, slacks, suits, and they had tailors there. You could get anything you want. We went in separate directions, and 2 hours later, I came back with a full shopping cart, and Doug was sitting smoking smoking a cigarette and drinking coffee. He said, where you been, Harv? I said, Doug, I've been out shopping. He said, well, I've been back. I got my stuff in 2 seconds, and you got a full shopping cart. You're a fool. I said, what'd you get? He said, well, I got a brown suit and a blue suit. I said, we got 86 games. He said, yeah, but I can wear the brown pants with the blue coat and the blue coat with the, and he said, I got all the outfits I need. So that was Doug Moe. He couldn't tie a tie. We'd go to games, and he'd leave his shirt with the tie on, hung up, so when we get to the game, he'd just take it off the rack and put it on.
It's like a little kid.
He didn't care. And I played for Frank McGuire, and he was impeccably dressed, and I cared about how I looked. So I don't think he would have been happy with coveralls and those checkered pants.
No, probably not.
Yeah, I'm a huge ABA fan. As these guys know, the greatest sports book that I've ever read is Loose Balls, The History of the ABA. And so you were a player there, you were a coach there, and I'm guessing you have stories. You probably have a million Doug Moe stories, just as one separate side note. But I'm guessing that was just an incredibly fun period of time.
It was the greatest. I used to keep a journal, and I spoke to Terry Pluto, and he took a lot of this stuff that we had talked about. But when I was assistant coach at North Carolina, making $6,000 a year, I had 2 years removed from playing on the Olympic team, coaching with Coach Smith. I was in heaven. It was great. The ABA started. I got a call from Marty Blake, who was a GM of the St. Louis Hawks. He offered me a tryout with the Hawks, but he said if I didn't make it, I could become assistant coach. And I said, no, I'm happy where I am. Next day, I got a call from Doug Moe. He was in Italy playing in Padua. He said, Larry, the ABA's starting. They want me to play with New Orleans. And I told him I'd only play if you would come. I said, well, I hadn't played in 2 years. And he said, don't worry about it, Harv. I'll take care of you. So I went to Coach Smith and told him, and he said, look, you're 26 years old. He said, someday you won't be able to play. You can always come back and coach. So why don't you just take a chance? So I went down, and Sean Morton Downey Jr., the talk show guy, was the president and GM of the New Orleans Buccaneers. So we went to this building, the Barone building. There was on the directory, there was no New Orleans Buccaneers, and I just saw his name. So Doug and I went upstairs, and we go meet Sean Morton Downey, and he was the president of some can company or something. And he turned the placard around and said, New Orleans Buccaneers. So we sat down, and he was starting to talk about Doug Moe. You're the greatest. You're all-world first team. I want you here badly. You're going to be the first guy we sign. There was no draft or anything like that. They were just signing players. So Doug said, well, what are you going to give me? And he said, well, we'll give you $20,000 the first year, $22,500 the second. And Doug said, is it all guaranteed, no cut? And he said, yeah. And I said, I remember Doug was making $10,000 in Italy. So, wow. So then Doug said, well, what are you going to give Larry? And he said, we'll give Larry $12,500. Is it a cut contract? And Sean said, well, I hadn't seen him play. Doug said he ain't coming unless it's a guaranteed contract. So Sean said, okay. Doug said, well, what if he starts? And he said, well, I'll give him a $2,500 bonus. And I'm sitting there, I'm making $6,000. I'm cocky enough to think I got $15,000. This is like heaven, get paid to play. And then Sean Morton Downey looks at me and he said, Larry, you've been coaching at Carolina. I know you probably teach kids all the time. Why don't you come down early to New Orleans and start giving clinics? We were there the same year the Saints started. So Doug said, well, what are you going to give him? And he said, well, I'll give you $8,000 if you come down. Doug said, he's going to make more than me. And he negotiated my first contract.
That's a pretty good deal.
And I ended up starting, and, the rest is history.
So SMU has gone more than 20 years without winning consistently. You obviously wouldn't have taken this job if you didn't think it was going to work. How is it going to work, and how do you bring winning basketball back to SMU?
Well, you just look in Texas. I mean, you go to any great program and there's Texas kids playing, whether it's Kansas, anywhere, North Carolina, you name it. Everybody's recruiting here. There's great kids in the state. When I was at Kansas, you'd come down here. Kids don't want to leave here. We're playing in the Big East, which is an amazing conference. It's getting better in football, and it's as good as any in basketball. We have a great school and a great location, a great facility. You got the Mavericks here, and if you play in the Big East and you're ever any good, you can play in American Airlines Arena. I would hope that, someday we would create that interest. Villanova does it. So I think everything's in place. And if we show the coaches in this state that we care about the game and we'll care about their kids, there's no reason why they wouldn't want to go to SMU. And then you got to be brain dead. If you get talent, you're going to win in spite of the coach. So I'm just hopeful that, they feel that will be responsible and care about the kids and want to send them to SMU.
We have to issue one warning. Your radio play-by-play announcer is the man in that room, Rich Phillips, and he can be a real beating. So just watch out for him.
Well, I met him. I met him yesterday, so I just hope he has things to talk about that are fun, so we can move forward.
Well, hey, we really appreciate you coming down here today. I know a lot of people at SMU in the city of Dallas are excited that you're here coaching basketball. You certainly don't look 71, and we appreciate the time this morning.
Well, my mom lived to 106. So,
that's what we heard.
Yeah,
so you got a good 30 years left coaching.
Hopefully.
See, that's what you use on the recruiting trail.
I'll think about that. That's one I'll definitely consider.
Coach, thanks. Good luck to you.
Thanks so much.
That's the great Larry Brown with us here on The Ticket at 7:07. And up next, it's Gordo and Muse in the News.